I ain't Captain Walker. I'm the guy who carries Mr. Dead in his pocket. Hello YouTubers, you're in an all-new My Favorite segment, and with the upcoming release of Ready Player One, I decided to revisit my favorite films from pop culture, and I started thinking about my favorite film series of Mad Max. So here is a personal ranking of my favorite Mad Max films. I've been a huge Mad Max fan ever since I was a young kid. Mad Max was one of the films that inspired me to be a filmmaker. I've gone from childhood to adulthood loving the films. Now, I love all the Mad Max films, but if I had to start from my least favorite to most favorite, it would start with Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I love Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Of course, he had two different directors, and there was an original story about a group of kids in an apocalyptic future. This was forced to become a Mad Max story, and in many ways, this has some amazing sequences, and very few third films can still feel original and refreshing. But this film just loses steam for me in the second act, where the children come in. The movie comes to a complete halt. It really does feel like two different movies. The first being Mad Max losing all his items through Jedediah the Captain, him going to Bartertown. I love that whole opening of Thunderdome. It builds up this gladiatorial match with him and Master Blaster. You have Ant Entity played by Tina Turner. The music of this, One of the Living, We Don't Need Another Hero. This is a continuation of the Max we saw in The Road Warrior. And I really love the film. Then he breaks a deal and he must face the wheel. And he gets sent to the desert, Gulag. Then you get these lost boys, so to speak. They're looking for their Captain Walker. They're from an airplane. Captain Walker is long gone. And Max has to again fend for people who cannot defend themselves from other individuals. He has to protect these group of children and get them to safety, get them away from here. And I love it. The ending is very action-packed. It remembers that it's a Mad Max film in the third act, has spectacular chase sequences, and I like the chemistry between Mel Gibson and Tina Turner, of her calling Max Raggedy Man. It's a good ending for the Mad Max trilogy. It's just not my most favorite. I actually really love this film. I loved it as a child. I thought it was a second film before I found out it was a third film. No. This film is really a good movie. A lot of people give it a lot of flack. I actually like this movie, and it's really well done for being a PG-13 Mad Max film. It's just the story with the children in the second act that really bogs this film down on repeated viewings. The middle is really slow, and it just breaks momentum that the first part of the film started. So because of that, it's lower on my list. Whereas the next film on my list, Mad Max from 1979, is a classic revenge movie. This is before the post-apocalyptic world we see in the sequels. It's on the brink of that world. I love Mad Max being a police enforcer, a cop basically. The relationship between him and his wife, his child, his partner Goose. Yeah, if your name's Goose in a movie and you're a partner to somebody, pretty much you're gonna die. Just ask Top Gun. It's a really great movie. You have the toe cutter, Bubba Zanetti. They're looking for the guy who killed their friend, the Knight Rider. And it's really about gangs taking over the highway. He has to fight a motorcycle gang. He wants to get out of this line of work. He feels like he's becoming just as bad as the men he's hunting down. And there's a great theme to this. And the reason why I have this above Thunderdome, Thunderdome is great in many ways, and some parts are superior than the original Mad Max. Mad Max has a payoff at the end, and it keeps building and building and building until it gets to that pinnacle moment of Max leaving on vacation and them finding him and his wife and killing his wife right in front of him. It's at that moment that Max Rokitansky breaks and becomes Mad Max, the Road Warrior. And the last part of this movie is just a straight-up revenge movie. This and 1987's RoboCop have to be one of my favorite revenge movies. I love Mad Max. Has a spectacular end. Them going after his partner Goose earlier, all the people he cares about, him finally crossing that line to go after them. He becomes brutal enough to pillage, brutal enough to basically have retaliation against these men who own the highway. And I love that scene where he gets the V8 Interceptor. Such a classic scene, the music. Mad Max is a terrific film, and yeah, it's an Australian masterpiece, independent film at that. I love Mad Max. And it's one of my favorite films. This got me into filmmaking. I just love everything about this. And with that story and the way it sets up the origin of Max Rokitansky as this character, I have it a little bit higher than Thunderdome. Above Mad Max would be 2015's Mad Max Fury Road. I love this sequel. Very few sequels can be as good, if not better, than some of its predecessors in many ways. And this film was spectacular, especially with a different Max. Not only was it like 30 years later, but you also have Tom Hardy replacing Mel Gibson as Mad Max. Of course, this was supposed to be made in 2001. Many factors postponed the filmmaking process, and they end up having to get a new actor, but I love Tom Hardy in this. He's not exactly Mel Gibson, but there's certain areas where he does feel very much like Max Rakitansky. You get certain flashbacks to Mad Max 1979. I love how you have the toe cutter playing a Morton Joe in this, and then Charlize Theron is one kick-ass woman as Furiosa. She's up there with Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor. She is awesome in this. Almost like Mad Maxine. I love her. I love her as a heroine in this. Her and Tom Hardy are great as Mad Max and Furiosa. The action scenes are high-octane action. Everything about this, it goes back to traditional filmmaking just put on steroids. It updates the action for the 21st century, and Junkie XL's score is phenomenal. I love Mad Max Fury Road. It's a blast from beginning to end. In an age of reboots and sequels that have been so disappointing, it's nice seeing a director come back and bring Mad Max back to its former glory. And again, it's an R-rated film, so it goes back to its earlier roots. It just updates it and gives it a bit of adrenaline. And it is awesome. Witness it to the roads of Valhalla. As great as Mad Max Fury Road is and the other films, to me personally, my favorite Mad Max film is Mad Max 2, also known as The Road Warrior. The Road Warrior is the first one to show us a true post-apocalyptic world. That chase scene at the end of the film that was 15 minutes long, that whole introduction of showing the world in turmoil, it becoming a white line nightmare, them introducing Max in that way, this apocalyptic road warrior, and him ultimately having to defend a group of people. It takes a formula we've seen in westerns, such as the Dollars trilogy with A Man with No Name. Max Rakitansky as the road warrior is pretty much Clint Eastwood's character from the Sergio Leone trilogy. I love it. But also, it goes to show you, even though he's lost his humanity, it shows you that he's willing to fight for a noble cause after losing everything. God, they even killed his dog. You had that guy in the hockey mask, the other guy there who was mad at him who came out in Weird Science. Yeah, the Road Warrior is awesome and pretty much set up the rules for any other post-apocalyptic storytelling in the future. Fallout games wouldn't exist without this movie. There's so much in the post-apocalyptic genre that would not exist without the success of the Road Warrior. And to me, sometimes less is more. Even though the other ones were better shot, had a lot of action, it didn't feel as real or gritty as the Road Warrior. And also the story was simple. He only had like 15 lines of dialogue. That's less than he had in Fury Road. But Mel Gibson conveys so much through emotion. We really get to see the broken shell of a man that we left off with at the end of Mad Max. I love everything about this. Even Bruce Spence as the gyro captain. Their chemistry towards one another. The Road Warrior is a cinematic masterpiece and one of the best action films ever made. One of the best sequels. And to me, it's my favorite and what I think is the best Mad Max film out of all four. Anyway, that was a brief my favorite segment of the Mad Max films. Let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Mad Max movie? Have you seen it? If you haven't seen any of the Mad Max films, I highly recommend it. Seriously, you will not be disappointed. Just let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Mad Max film? If you like this, click the like button and subscribe for more videos.